Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. We are back again in the studio with my brother, Austin Douglas, and we are very excited to have him back today. He's just returned from a 1-month-long journey over to Scotland, which his family's heritage is from, and it was a really great opportunity for him to have some pretty transformative growth in reflection, in writing, and in internal therapy and unwinding and finding where he wants to move in life after the stem cell transplant and how he can use that going forward to help motivate and drive, build discipline in his daily life as he works in his constant pursuit of the impossible. I'm glad to have you back, brother.
I'm glad to be back. Yeah. So it was transformative, like you said, but had to come back to reality eventually. So, but yeah, it was a very
Plus,
good time.
I figure you miss us all at some point.
Yeah, I definitely was. I enjoyed my time in such a beautiful country, both city-wise and countryside-wise. Absolutely. But eventually you're like, all right, well, the people that I care about, that are closest to me are 4,000 miles away. So this is fun and all, but I really, I yearn for the moments that I get to share those experiences with you all.
Especially with Pete.
As we buy our Highland mansion, yes.
Yeah. You guys had a pretty good training session this morning, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did chest today. And it was nice because Pete's not looking to really push a whole lot of heavy weight at the moment. And I have already come to that notion just over the past couple of months. Many months prior to that, it was certainly in the magazine, ready to be explored. But I've also been wanting to switch over to a more hypertrophic regiment and really just treat my body a bit more, be a bit more proactive in making sure that everything's working good and not really pushing towards too much risk in my training regiment, which I'm not saying that if you go in my case here, the powerlifting route, that you are just, negating risk. I mean, you do have to put some of that to the side, but for me, I want to be in control of the weight, and I want to be at lighter weights. I don't want to kind of tune up overtly my CNS and my immune system from the training. I want to push myself, but I'm not here to absolutely smash. I don't have heavy lifting goals at the moment. For the future, yes, but right now I just want to get my body in a very good position, get a lot of blood flow to the muscle, really increase muscle size, increase the amount of muscle or muscular, nuclei and cells themselves, really get the memory back. And yeah, so that's where I'm at training wise and goals for the moment. And so it was really nice to get into the gym with Pete. We're both just lightweight, 145 on the bar, and just doing we did 4 sets of 10 to 15. So it was nice, and some accessories as well, which is where the isolation part of that for me has become a lot of fun. Whereas when I was training for powerlifting, I did the compound movements, and it was just like accessories are like,
yeah,
I'm already, somewhat, or if not majorly exhausted,
completely obliterated
from the compound movements, because you're doing RPE 8, 9, 9.5, 9 3/4, 12. and then you get to accessories and you're like, oh, these isolation movements. Like I've already exhausted stuff, and it's like, okay, well, I gotta, I do need to get some blood flow, make sure that I have maximum flow to the muscle that I just worked, especially. Whereas now with this, like, isolation and accessory movement has become my main movement, honestly. Mm-hmm. I enjoy the compound movement still. I still deadlift, I still squat, I still bench, I still incline bench. But getting out and doing quad curls, hamstring curls, bicep work, tricep work, isolating the different movements. And I know that getting that specific is not well liked by everybody, even within the hypertrophy movement, I suppose. Getting too in depth or not in depth enough. There's classes of thought everywhere, but for me, I enjoy working individual muscle groups twice a week, and I'm doing my best to be able to do that and get my body to the position to where I'm able to able to recover in a state of quality that doesn't put me into the ground.
Yeah. And
so sessions like this, especially with Pete, get in there, we chit chat and we work out, and it's really, it takes a lot of the daily stresses away. Working out by yourself is great, but you're still in, you're kind of in your head. Even if you're listening to music, you're still in your head.
Yeah.
And lifting with others, and Pete was thankful to go out at, we were both there. Of course he was there before me, but I pulled up at 0501 and he was there and we were ready to go.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I'm the same way. I've always liked training with other people way better. Like the more, the better. But I know some people are totally opposite. They like
want to be
zero people. They want to be completely. And I think there was probably a time in my life where I had that. Mm-hmm. But now it's definitely a very. I don't even know if social is the right word, but it's whatever word you would use to. I guess maybe community's a better word.
Yeah.
Or family is the word that gets thrown around a lot at Monsters. And I think it's absolutely true. It's a bunch of people all from totally different backgrounds, but we share this one common love, this one common passion. And sometimes we share, very comparable pain points and things like that drive us toward this sport and towards this growth and towards this activity. And to be able to come together and grow together in whatever discipline we may be chasing, because, there's all sorts of disciplines out of Monsters, whether it's powerlifting or bodybuilding or just general health and wellness or whatever it may be, just coming together to grow together with that specific intention to grow physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I think it's hard to beat something like that. And I think it's actually hardwired into our DNA just as human species to crave that and to want that and to need that. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, there are times where being alone, to go more internally, to work through things, to analyze your own thoughts and feelings and emotions, to analyze your own mental state, and even to a point your spiritual state, that can also be very beneficial. And I know you spent a lot of time this last month doing just that, mostly through the practice of writing, which has been really cool. I've been working through it. I've been reading it, editing some drafts of some cool things you're working on. And it's just, it feels like I have like a window looking in to a different part of your mind that I've never like totally seen before, which is a really cool experience. And it's very insightful, and gives me a lot of personal insight to go off of as well. So what was that process like for you? But just kind of walk us through what the last month's meant to you and what it's done for you.
What it means. Being in Scotland, pun intended, means the world to me. It's my favorite place in the world at this moment, but I would assume that it's probably gonna keep that. The value sentimentally is second to none. I would definitely say that. For how I feel when I'm there, physically looking at the landscape, which landscape is always been my cup of tea in terms of when I go to see. I love fine arts museums. A museum of fine arts. I didn't say contemporary in there. Contemporary's fine, but I prefer, pre-1900. But I love landscape paintings in general. That's what I love. And for me, Scotland, especially when you get up into the Highlands, it's just a wonderfully crafted, beautiful piece of art. And it's in every direction that you look. So that, for one, is something that really calms me, honestly. It really brings me to a place of peace and solace. Sitting beside a small river rushing, hearing it hit up against the rocks. It's a bit of a tranquil moment. Like when we were, my nephew and I were up at the Isle of Skye, and we hiked to the fairy pools, which is just this. You have kind of three mountains, like separated by valleys, but like just kind of three mountains right there. They're not huge, but definitely rock mountains. Beautiful. And especially with that day, it was a cloudy day in the morning when we went there, and it was misting. It wasn't raining, but it was misting, and all that water had turned the mountains black. I mean, like matte black with a little bit of sheen from the actual water itself. And hiking up that, the grass is somewhat turning green, still a little bit orange. And you're walking up a trail, and beside the trail is the creek that kind of comes that the water from the mountains comes down from. And you just occasionally have a step, and at that step you have a nice little waterfall and then a nice little pool. And they're called the fairy pools because the water can turn because of the rocks turning colors and stuff like that underneath it, or at the bottom of the pools, they look blue or green and stuff like that. In this case, they were green. And so when you have landscapes like that, that are not difficult to find, I mean, waterfalls are just so common, especially up in the Highlands because of, it just being a mountainous region. The mountains themselves, I have an appreciation for, a heavy appreciation for. That fills me up with a lot of joy. Seeing them, driving by them, feeling them, because that's, for me, with mountains in general, that is my opportunity to not only feel, but to exercise and to absorb the reality that there's something bigger than me. And for me, I don't get to exercise that in the practice of ideals. So how do I practice that? It's with, and some may call this the world of materialism, but to me, mountains are not material. Mountains are real, authentic, natural, and present before, during, and after my life. So it's there, and they're beautiful, and I've come to love them. So yeah, mountains, they carry a lot of weight for me. And once you once you come out of the Highlands, I really enjoy the city. The city is the city of Edinburgh. Glasgow, I don't have much experience with, but the experience that I do have with it, they've a lot of modern buildings to be built around the old buildings, and so it's a weird eclectic mix. Not that they've done it terribly, but it's just not my cup of tea. My cup of tea is Edinburgh, and they've made the effort to keep it as old as possible with the buildings. And if you're going to build new around it, you don't get these large, completely glass structured skyscraper looking things. It's definitely, you get a lot of stone buildings. Like the area of Fountain Bridge, where I had stayed for a portion of my trip, excuse me, they had some newer buildings that were built, but they were definitely like stone faced, some glass, but mostly, stone faced. And so that was, you could definitely tell that it is a conscious, legitimate effort by them to keep that as kind of unique and like architecturally splendid, I guess, as possible for me. I just love it. It's darker architecture. It's somewhat gothic. So it's very gothic. The Scott Monument there on Prince's. It's not Princess Street. You have to find that. Yeah. Like it's Prince's. So you always want to say Princess, but there's only one S. Carson and I both had that problem. Prince's Street. You have the Scott Monument, which is that very gothic. My other Instagram profile, that profile pic of me standing in front of that. That's the Scott Monument, after Sir Arthur Scott. And so, famous poet, writer of Scotland, and so you have the architecture like that just plastered throughout the city, and it's gorgeous. I absolutely love the city, and having all of that in mind, the cityscape of Edinburgh, the beautiful rivers and waterfalls and mountains of the Highlands, I find, like I said before, especially with the Highlands, I find a lot of solace and a lot of peace. Things that I get it from people over here in the States, but I don't get it necessarily from my environment while I'm over here. And I hope that doesn't upset anybody, but I just don't. I don't. The closest thing I get to is my time out in Salt Lake City, surrounded by mountains, actual mountains, the Rocky Mountains. I get that from there. I get the environmental tranquility, especially when I'm hiking up into the mountains at like 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet, gasping for air, but I'm just surrounded by beauty and I love it. But over here I'm surrounded by beautiful people. And so it's nice to get over to Scotland. It's nice to be able to sit down and find myself behind the laptop or with a notepad in hand and doing some writing.
Yeah.
So, and when I started writing, especially if I can say it, our ebook, some good stuff coming for you all, some great stuff coming for you all, for the introduction part. With that coming up, I knew after Carson had flown home that I wasn't there for vacation, lounging around, go to the spa, get a massage, lay at the beach, yada, yada, yada. That's not what I was there for. I knew that once he left, I purposefully set myself in a place that I felt astonished by, to write something hopefully astonishing and incredible, and lots of other adjectives I could probably use. And so I knew that I wanted to purposefully, and I needed to get to work. And I found a nice little routine. So there's this coffee shop called the Black Sheep Coffee Company, or Black Sheep Coffee. It's a Swedish brand, I believe, and they have a few stores there in Edinburgh and Glasgow. And this particular coffee place has it holds a special place in my heart from the first time I ever visited Edinburgh. A good friend of mine and I, we went there for some coffee, and there's this huge mural of just a woman biting her tongue, but just kind of looking at you, from like kind of like upper chest up, just on the wall. And I mean it's huge. I mean, it's probably 14 by 12 or something like that. I mean, it's a huge mural. And I don't know what it was. It's just a cool spot. It's a really cool spot. It's my kind of spot. The seating is a bit more modern, not necessarily contemporary, but I mean, it's, simple wooden tables, metal legs, chairs are comfortable. A couple of loungy, cushiony seats, but mostly that stuff. I mean, it's definitely a space for you to get some work done. And the seating area is kind of off from the front counter as well, so you're not not everybody's sitting in the coffee shop is like watching the counter and the people come in and out. So I mean, you can get a little bit of seclusion, I suppose. And so every morning I got up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and started walking at 6 to get there about 6:30. I walked a mile and a half up about 450 feet in elevation up to get to it every morning with my backpack on. My backpack had, protein shake, San Pellegrino. Get up there and I get my coffee. I mean, it's, I'm treating this as like, all right, I'm heading into work, but I'm going to work on something that soon I will find out that I absolutely love doing. I really, so I got to work, and I really come to enjoy writing. I mean, a lot. Like I was excited. I was excited to go in there and work for 6, 7, 8 hours. Lots of caffeine was involved, but I was ready to work. And I've never, it's been a very long time since I've been so excited to tackle some challenge like that. Like a challenge that is just so personal to me, something that I really, really am passionate about. I've enjoyed the challenge of impossible performance since we've started. Absolutely. Yes. But writing for me is kind of like performing a piece of music. It's something that is just deeply personal to me. And again, I've enjoyed the challenges of lifting with the monsters, and I've enjoyed trying to take care of my body in these times of absolute mayhem or chaos. But working on something that you're so, somewhat secretively, but ultimately you're just so passionate about. I was filled with glee to go in there and to write. And I, no matter how much that piece gets edited, for necessary reasons, I am so happy that I sat down and I wrote what I wrote, and that I could write something with the amount of gravity that I wanted it to have, and that I had, it was something that I was in control of, something that I was doing genuinely something that I was tackling in my life that I had control of, I guess you could say control of the narrative, which the narrative of my past 3 years, I've not had the control of, or much control. And I think that was something that really came, that was something really big that came from that time, because I was in control of my choice. I made the choice to get up every morning super early on quote unquote vacation. I'm getting up at 5 a.m., prepping my body, walking up to a coffee shop that's a mile and a half away when I'm walking by other coffee shops, multiple coffee shops, cafes, to get to this one place. It's quiet, serene, and I love it. And I get to work on something, and I don't know if it was just simply like I don't know if it's like a dopamine like rush or dump or whatever, like whatever that is, to where like you do a really long run and you're just like, oh, or like a really intense workout and you just feel that like relief. But I kind of had that, but also kind of like mixed up with a bit of euphoria once I finished that writing, and I was like, I just like wrote something legitimate. I've written stuff in the past, of course. I've journaled, for years now, but to write something that may be seen by other eyes, just I was euphoric. I was excited. I'm absolutely pumped to take this to the masses. I mean, it really, and it comes from a very, I don't want to say dark place. It comes from a very deep and meaningful place. And I hope that the impact that it has can be felt in some kind of manner of how it helped me. And I mean, that's the whole reason why that we're writing it. Like, I mean, these ebook, this whole program that we're doing is because of what we've been put through. I don't know, what do you call that? Even with my experience with this, my experience of the Dance with Death is a bit more recent than yours. Like, we both still just been through so much, and where we've come from that, we need to be able to put on a paper. We've put it into podcast form, and we've put it to the stage, but I think we need to put it on a paper as well. And that I think what we're doing with this is paramount for us to really chase the impossible and to be impossible. Because we can sit here and we can talk about it all the time for our listeners and our viewers to go and do, but we need to check ourselves and to continue in doing so. And I'm definitely speaking that from my personal side of it. I'm not saying
it's both
like
of us.
like demanding
Always.
that of you, Matt, but like that's like this is me engaging in that impossible because it's a passion that I've set to the side for way too long. And what did it cause? After I did my third edit of the ebook, I sat there and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start writing an autobiography. And I wrote in 2 days 18 pages. So yeah, it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad that you found this outlet, and I'm really excited to see where it goes, but it's also really exciting in the moment to see it develop. Working through the ebook draft and reading it, absorbing it, taking it all in. You described it exactly how I've interpreted it, which is it's very emotional.
Yeah.
But I think that's good.
It has to be.
It gives it something unique, gives it something different, and I think it really draws the reader in and appeals to them much in the same way that the podcast does. So obviously the podcast is very emotional. A lot of what we do is very emotional, and very complex and very deep. And that's just the nature of facing things like what we face, like what a lot of our guests face. Anytime you're in pursuit of the impossible, it's going to be a deep, arduous process. So the book definitely comes across that way, and I like that it does. The other part of it that seems to really stick out to me is it really like directly feels like, and I don't know if this was an intention of yours or not, but it really feels like you're writing it to a former version of yourself. And I'm reading through, I'm like, yeah, that's what Austin in 2022 would have needed to hear. Which again, I think is an incredibly powerful place to be with writing, because if we ascribe to the idea that the meaning of life is to create the version of yourself that you most admire and give that to the world, or the version of yourself that you needed most when you were in your darkest place, then you've created that version and you're able to reflect back to that person who needed it most and give back to them, if in no other way, but at least in homage to them. That's a practice I've been very heavily involved in recently, especially with lifting, is really going back to visit that person that I was and really like put myself literally back in that exact spot, in that exact same body, and the exact same, there's a lot of visualization that goes on here, but put myself in that exact same scenario, but with an infinitely stronger mind, body, and spirit. And it's been very therapeutic for me. It's difficult, certainly, but it's been very therapeutic. And I think when it cuts through in that manner, it's going to be very powerful to anybody who reads it. Because who you were 3 years ago now, there's so many people that are going to be in that exact same spot. And even if they're not in that same spot right now, they're nearly limitless people who have been in that spot at one point in their lives. And so when you read it, it takes you back to whenever that spot was in your life. And you're like, yes, I remember the anger, and I remember the falling into that dark void of just not being able to feel anything. You know, I remember, I remember some of those really dark places, and I remember pulling out of those, and I remember how this message helped me, and I remember all this, the skills and the lessons and the teachings and all of the mindset tools and practices we've developed throughout the years. I remember when they came, and most especially, I'm excited for how we're going to be able to develop them moving forward. Because this is really our attempt at providing a concrete framework to our message, which is something that we have both felt is very needed and something that is very difficult to put together, but something we're very excited to do for everyone who's a part of what we do, and honestly for ourselves as well. Yeah. Because the truths that we discuss, we feel so strongly in our hearts, in our minds, in our souls, in our bodies, but they're not inherently very solidified, concrete things. They don't come with a lot of direction. So our new goal and purpose and mission is to provide solid, structured framework to them so that they become more actionable, so that anybody who encounters impossible performance can more easily adopt them into their lives. And I love the start of the ebook. I think it's going to do a phenomenal job of giving that to people, and I can't wait to see where it goes going forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited for people to read it, but like you said, I'm excited to see what where it puts you when you read it. Because I definitely, as you kind of inferred there, I definitely had to position myself in what, I mean, even pre-diagnosis Austin would have needed to hear, but definitely post-diagnosis, pre-treatment Austin needed to hear. What Austin pre-treatment, post-first relapse needed to hear. Because those were the moments that, looking back now, I'm happy with not overreacting. I've been extremely, I'm not going to say that word. I've been lucky, but I have a great team around me. I've been able to cultivate that. And that came through tenfold in those moments to where I wasn't even able really to put myself in a position to where I would overreact to a situation, especially in relapse after relapse. But I still need a little bit of personal, as the ship gets knocked off course a little bit from some strong winds, and it's difficult to read my compass. You call in the reinforcements and your closest individuals, but then ultimately it's your decision. No matter how high you're talked of by those around you and consoled and the oozing of compassion, you're the one that still has to make the decision of, okay, I have the tools. Am I going to make this choice to steer the ship back to the port of which I sail for? And I did. It got easier after each relapse, but when I wrote that, and as we continue to compose further works, I think it's paramount for us to be extremely detailed in our analyzation of what we were feeling in those moments. This is a standard that I put upon myself. I don't demand it of anybody else. I can only recommend it. But being extremely and brutally honest with yourself of how you felt back then. Because there are thoughts that you thought. There are words that you had said to yourself or to others. Hopefully not others, but like, there are words that you said to yourself. There are thoughts that you created within the mind that you may regret or may have subconsciously tried to erase it because you're like, oh, that I should have thought about that. Just really dark stuff of, especially when you're coming into these first dances with death, involuntarily. You have a lot of crazy thoughts. At least I did. And not that I relive those thoughts. I'm honest with myself that those thoughts are okay to have, but you need to be extremely careful with how you react to them. Because you at first I was, especially with death and that sort of melancholy, that sort of euphoric limbo that you're dancing, I I knew that. I know now that at first I was really, really, really nasty towards myself. And through time, I worked on putting that into an outlet that would erase that extreme negativity that I carried. And it's moments like that that I wish to bring to others, not verbatim reports, but being honest with myself in the analyzation of those thoughts were had. I'm not going to be angry with myself for having those thoughts, but what I can do is I can reconcile with myself, and I can still be an incredible individual moving forward. And you live and you learn, and let's share those moments, and let's try to do our best to create something really, really beautiful from absolutely monstrative and malevolent times. So
it really does feel as if, even though I wasn't there with you, it feels like what this trip was able to provide was just a nice closing of the previous, not just chapter, but the previous book of your life. And the opening and literal composing of a new story.
And that's new story is that's a lovely way of saying it, because I definitely would agree that I've closed a book. I'm ready to write a new one. I'm ready to something we briefly discussed yesterday. I don't know when precisely, but the blaming of self. I struggled with that after my first technical relapse when I was upgraded to Cleveland Clinic the first time. I turned the knife towards myself and I just pushed it in, hoping that vengeful nature of what I was going through was going to be avenged. And feeling that bite, feeling that air being drawn out from you, blinded by the light shining off of the blade, refusing to look down. But then once you're willing to deal with that, you finally take a glance and notice that your hand is on the blade. Your hand is on the handle, pushing it in, keeping it there. Feeling somehow that you're deserving of that pain. You're deserving of that torment. And you don't. You don't deserve it. And you need to fight it. And you need to realize that you have the power to fight it. You have the ability to fight back, and you have the choice to do so. And what I've learned over the past 3 years is that I have a lot more choice in what I say, what I do, how I feel, and where I want to lead my life. And that's something that I hope to be able to put into words to the best of my ability to share with everybody. And to just stop with all that nonsense. And again, create something beautiful from it.
Yeah. Absolutely, brother. I couldn't said it better to myself. So guys, that's what we've got for today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, the number one thing we ask is if you got something out of this episode, which we know you did, please share it with everyone you know, because we know that this message, this mission, this mindset has the capacity to help anyone and everyone. And by sharing it with those you know, you help us actually further our mission and our vision for everything we're doing at Impossible Performance. And as Austin said, you have a choice. You have a choice in nearly everything about your life. You may not get to choose the situation you're placed in. You may not get to make the rules. You may not get to decide the circumstance. You may not even get to decide the outcome. But what you do always get to decide is who you are, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. You get to decide how you're going to react to the circumstances. You get to decide how you're going to carry yourself in those circumstances. And ultimately, you get to decide to be impossible, to build that version of yourself who could not or would not otherwise have been able to exist. And that version of yourself will inevitably do the impossible. So thank you guys again for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being a part of everything we do. Because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you for listening. And as always, be impossible.